or good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is JBR, and today we are speaking with Magdalene, Public Relations Advisor for SimukaAfrica.org, the co-creator and curator of the 34 Gallery Initiative. Wow, thank you for your time in speaking with all of us today. I wanted to just take a moment to do a deep dive with you. Essentially, what goes on behind the scenes in the 34 Gallery Initiative and acknowledge actually the profound impact your work has had on thousands of artists in Web3, but how important and most importantly, the impact this initiative has on the Samuka African Youth Association.
That's quite the introduction. Thank you for having me on your platform today. This is an unusual experience for me as I'm used to very much working behind the scenes. So another aspect of what I do for SimukaAfrica.org is I am the UNV online personnel supervisor. So I am a part of the United Nations Volunteer Program. I supervise all of the UNV staff that is assigned to the 34 Gallery and Simuka for their online operations. And for today, I am off camera to stand in solidarity with our 34 Gallery artists around the world who have to remain anonymous. We have a very big issue with privacy in the digital age, and I'd like to touch on that a little bit during this interview.
That's so great. Thank you so much for indicating that because I was actually going to ask about this. Why not be visible? Why not be out loud? And I really appreciate that you are telling us this. Let's just jump in. I have thousands of questions for you. If you could just please tell us as much or as little as you'd like about yourself. And this would be prior to the involvement with the 34 Gallery SimukaAfrica.org initiative. If you can, if you want to.
My name is Magdelene D.D. Prior to my involvement with Simuka Africa and the United Nations Volunteer Program, I was the former outreach director for an organization called poweringpotential.org, which creates solar power computer labs in rural communities for schools in Tanzania, Africa, and the Peruvian Amazon. I worked with them for a number of years. And I've worked in international sustainability initiatives, primarily in education, since 2007 to help the world's at-risk children. And in addition to that, the DD stands for Doctorate of Divinity. I studied comparative religion for more than 20 years because I wanted to understand the nature of evil and why we keep choosing it for humanity. I needed to do that because of the two primary reasons for my career. I grew up without parents and I am a 9/11 survivor.
Yeah, you just left me breathless for a second. What led you to take on such a challenging mission? I mean, this that you're doing, I understand that you needs to be involved in helping others and assisting others. Where was it or what was the pivotal moment in your life that sort of shaped your commitment to these causes in specific?
My entire career trajectory is the summation of every teacher and mentor and adult who decided to take a chance and an opportunity on a kid that was pretty much, according to statistics, going nowhere. If you look at what happens to children, particularly female children without parents, those outcomes are catastrophic. So I had teachers, I had mentors who told me that I had writing ability, that said I had creative ability and that I needed to use that. I needed to maximize that to become a good person, to embark on dreams that I might be able to cultivate. And that is so important for children because when you come from a disadvantaged background of any type, the world is constantly telling you that you're not able to accomplish anything, that you operate in a world of negation, you're nothing. And to have a professional come and say, you can write, you can paint, you can dance, you can sing. That's worth its weight in gold for children because it enables them to dream. That's been my driving motivation. And the reason for that is and my secondary reason is my 9/11 experience. I was a children's bookseller in the World Trade Center complex. I worked for Borders Books and Music, and I'm sure that a lot of your audience remembers Borders, remembers Walden Books, where I worked for them. And that particular store, store 142 in Building 5, had 3 floors. It was a gorgeous store. It cleared multi-million dollar sales there because of its location, and it was absolutely beautiful. I used to have my lunch sitting in between the towers, dreaming my dreams, and I was 21 years old. I
Wow.
took a gap year in college. I already had an established journalism career as a columnist. I decided, let's take a year off. Let's go to New York. Let's write the great American novel. And I was a children's bookseller in the Trade Center, and I was living my best life until I wasn't. The people that I knew who died on 9/11 were the parents of the children that I worked with. And I knew those kids by name. And when that tragedy happened, there are no sides for children. There are no good guys and bad guys. There's just terror and horror and war that has no explanation. Because whatever the adults try to come up with for a 10-year-old to explain why the world is suddenly burning all around them, frankly, isn't good enough. That's why I do what I do, because I was an unwanted kid, and I know what it's like to be a kid who grows up into a broken adult who paints the world into nightmares. I fought that reality. I think if more adults in this world fought those nightmares, maybe we can make something beautiful out of this earth instead of burning it to the ground. That's my primary motivation for my career.
So, how do you then balance the weight of these issues while maintaining your own sense of hope and resilience?
I think it's important post pandemic. I think the entire world, for the first time, felt the same exact thing. We had over 191 countries under lockdown during the pandemic. That was the first collective mental health trauma that everybody could seriously relate to. Where were you when the pandemic happened? Everybody can relate to this. However, after the pandemic, silence about mental health. It's just back to normal. So, how do I balance that? My balance is speaking about things people don't want to talk about because that's the line, that's the balance. There is no balance in this world if we can't have honesty, honest conversations. That's what keeps me focused in my career and in my life because I'm dealing with honest people. If you're running a mental health initiative, that's a lot of honesty. That's going to keep you balanced because you're there and you're not dealing with obfuscation and the superficial and the things that really don't matter and the pressure to conform. That's what's breaking us. That's what's putting us off balance. That's what's keeping us up at night.
What do you consider the cornerstone of 34 Galleries mission, and how has it sort of evolved over time?
There's a lot of to unpack there with the 3 organizations. So the first thing that I'll start with is Samuka Africa. So Samuka Africa Youth Association was founded in 2006 in Norton, Zimbabwe. It currently provides services on site to 8 different provinces, primarily to at-risk children, families, and child marriage survivors. Their programs there have enabled the young people in the area to have a new lease on life. And Zimbabwe leads the region in youth suicide. Founding director Ezekiel Mudimu and myself started looking at these numbers globally, and he said, let's start an arts initiative to try to address this because more than 80% of the world does not have access to mental health care. So most of us who don't have access to this, we're using the arts to get by. We partnered with Hug. First, it was just going to be a web page, and we were just going to do one open call for mental health art and how do you deal with your mental health struggles. We were so inundated by global artists and individuals in mental crisis that within 6 weeks were a full-scale initiative with a functional virtual gallery. That is just how overwhelming the demand was for art therapy and arts outreach. So the 34 Gallery was born out of this UN Agenda SDG 3.4. That is the part of the United Nations Sustainability Agenda that covers mental health. It is a small add-on to that sentence. It's not even its own sentence. And for that reason, we thought maybe mental health would be something that could reduce the global suicide rate, but at the same token, unite us because we just came out of a collective mental health trauma experience. Now, our virtual outreach has spanned more than 150 artists who have submitted artwork talking about their mental health struggles, talking about where they are in their careers. We have had artists who are in active conflict zones who are creating art with rudimentary tools. We have young children, teenagers who are making art, and the only thing they can really get access to is a cell phone. They're making digital and AI art this way. We've had people who were inpatient last year for suicide attempts who are now 34 gallery artists with art contracts. So the enormity of this initiative and the possibilities that it could have to really change the lives of a lot of people, it just can't be understated. We are so grateful to have the support of the United Nations Volunteer Program for our staff and to all the artists who continue to participate with us. I hope that was comprehensive enough.
Absolutely, absolutely. You touched on so many aspects of what it is that the organizations triangulate upon. It's really, really something that when you think about the world that we live in on this side and how we have a tendency to sort of take advantage of what it is that we have in front of us, screens and the ability to go to a store and go pick up artist materials and supplies when families don't have that. So it's mind-boggling when you think of it in a way of compartmentalizing the nations. Oh gosh, okay, so I'm not going to I'm doing what I said I would not do, and that is to make commentary because this is not about me at all. Do you see that the demographic has opened up in terms of how do you think that the platform is reaching those in the most isolated and or marginalized communities?
I will say that as a 34 gallery artist yourself, you have been very instrumental to our operations because a number of our female artists and young people have read your work with us and they are just awed by you and they're inspired to do better and be better where they are. So thank you for being you in this instance because this opportunity for us to even talk about this wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So I just wanted to say that first. And the next thing is when it comes to the demographics of those who are most in need, our drive to make a disposable culture across all cultures has created very cheap technology. It is easier for a young person to have access to a cell phone, which in a sense is a miniature Library of Alexandria, than it is for them to have food in some cases. This reality where you can have a person, a young person who's 14, 15 years old, barely has anything to eat, barely has a place to stay, but they will have a cell phone that puts them in touch with the international community. This is staggering. The people who listen to this around the world who are living in villages will understand what I'm saying with this. What we were seeing in these regions, whether we're talking about Indonesia or Vietnam or India or Zimbabwe or places in South America like Colombia, these young kids with no resources, rudimentary dirt floors, living in these isolated villages, but they have a cell phone and they're being bullied. Now, if you are being bullied in a high income country and you are in an established apartment or house, this is optional for you, this internet life. You can walk away from this and go do something else. we have opportunities where we're told that what happens online is really not that serious. But when you take a cell phone and you put it in the hands of a villager who is very isolated, has no real access to the outside world, and all of a sudden they have 1,000 comments on a post that they made telling them to either commit suicide or they're a waste of space, these children are not prepared for this reality. They have not grown up with this technology. They don't know what a troll is. They don't know any of the things that you and I took for granted because we grew up with the technology, with the computers, with the rest of it. Sometimes for these kids, that's the first technology that they have access to. And we're not realizing what that does. So when I say that this initiative is reaching people we never thought possible, it's because the technology is also reaching people we never thought possible. We can talk to that child who's in a remote village somewhere, and we have in many of these regions, not just in Zimbabwe, but around the world, because these young people, they're engaged, they're online, and they want to know about the world around them this way.
I truly believe that the initiative already has changed that. I think it's just going to expand upon what you've come up with. I think that I speak on behalf of everyone that is in the United States or in the UK. Um, my hope is that it grows exponentially and that it leaves an impact on those of us who perhaps aren't really doing anything other than I'm creating art because I need to make money. But perhaps someone will watch this and go, "Oh, I want to get involved. I really want to get involved." Thank you. Thank you for this. What has been the most meaningful or the most impactful collaboration that you've done to date with the trilogy? I say the trilogy because I mean, the 34 galleries, you, the Simoca Africa, and then United Nations. So what has been the most the one thing that you all came together and you just had this moment of, "Oh my God, my heart, I can't sleep."
Well, in the very beginning, the one that really let us know things were going to be very different was a young artist named Kunta. He submitted to one of our open calls. And I looked at this, and then I looked at the artist statement, and he said that he made this artwork in the middle of the Sudanese war. And he was stuck in the war zone for 45 days, and he was hiding, and he was making this artwork to keep himself sane because he was hearing the violence and he was scared. But he felt like if he could do the artwork, that he would be okay. And he was just drawing while all this chaos is going around him. And reading this and looking at the artwork, you couldn't help but be incredibly moved. That shifted the narrative for us. The United Nations strives to be politically neutral. Our UNV staff is trauma aware, culturally sensitive. Overall, humanity is in a big war, and that war is between left and right brain cognition. The left brain thinkers among us have decided that left brain knowledge is the only knowledge worth pursuing. And because so much of this, whether it's STEM or any of these types of industries, are reliant on logic, everything must be a commodity in order to have value, even when it comes down to human life. And that is the war we're really facing. It's not about cultures, the things that are nonsensical, surrealism. I remember being in MoMA once and hearing someone say that surrealism makes absolutely no sense. There's plenty of things in life that don't make sense. A platypus doesn't make sense. It still exists. It's not a commodity, though. It just exists. If this young man had not made this particular artwork and told his story, is it of value if there's not a price tag on it? It's definitely valuable to all of us. And that's something that we need to understand. The best things in life cannot be bought, cannot be purchased, and cannot be categorized. And I am a high functioning autistic woman. I was diagnosed when I was 27. So I understand a great deal of this life logically. but I have balance. I'm a creative person at the same time. So that particular instance has to be the greatest collaboration that we've ever done with Kunta, actually getting his artwork out there, because that proves that you don't have to be logical. You don't have to be a commodity. You can just be someone who's sitting there creating art because you feel like it and it makes you feel better. That's the whole point of the initiative. And until that moment, I don't think everybody realized that's what we're really advocating for, art for art's sake that helps with our mental health. And that really just drove the point home for us. His story was so incredibly powerful and incredibly moving that it changed our whole infrastructure of how we handle artists, of how we work with our open calls. And we wouldn't have been able to expand this far to also partner with art jobs without him being involved and just sharing his story. He didn't even work for us, he just told us what he went through.
Thank you for sharing that. These issues are very difficult to talk about, and however, we're having the conversation.